Stop whatever you're doing because what you are about to hear is not a drill, not a simulation, and not the kind of geopolitical speculation that gets walked back by morning. 6 hours ago, the Islamic Republic of Iran executed a precision strike package against the Dimona nuclear research center in the Negev desert, deploying a coordinated salvo of Fatah-2 hypersonic missiles and Shahed-238 loitering munitions that penetrated Israeli air defense architecture with surgical efficiency. The strike did not destroy the facility. It did not need to. What it accomplished was exponentially more devastating to Israeli strategic calculus. Iran has demonstrated beyond any analytical doubt that Israel's most sensitive nuclear installation, the facility that houses the estimated 90 to 400 warhead arsenal that forms the foundation of Israeli existential deterrence, is now targetable with precision and penetrable despite every defensive layer the United States and Israel have constructed over 60 years. The number of missiles that reached the Dimona perimeter before Israeli countermeasures could establish effective intercept geometry has been confirmed by satellite imagery analysis at 17. 17 precision-guided weapons systems executing terminal maneuvers at hypersonic velocity against a target that Israeli doctrine considers untouchable. The implications are not incremental. They are civilization-altering for the Middle Eastern strategic balance. This is not about damaged infrastructure or tactical battlefield losses that can be reconstituted through industrial production and alliance support. This is about the permanent collapse of the psychological foundation that has enabled Israeli strategic behavior for 6 decades. Israel has operated under the assumption, shared by every major power in the region and beyond, that its nuclear deterrent was invulnerable because the facilities that house it were invulnerable. That assumption died tonight. What replaces it is a strategic reality where Israel's ultimate insurance policy can be held at risk by adversary precision strike capabilities, fundamentally inverting the deterrence calculus that has governed regional competition since 1967. The event that triggered this analysis occurred between 0342 and 0348 local time, when Iranian missile forces executed a carefully choreographed demonstration strike that combined technical sophistication with strategic messaging in a package designed to communicate a single unambiguous message to Israeli decision-makers. Your nuclear deterrent no longer guarantees your security because we can now target the source of that deterrent with impunity. If this channel has been giving you the analysis that cuts through the noise of official narratives and mainstream defense commentary, now is the moment to make sure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with everyone in your network who is serious about understanding what is actually happening at the sharp edge of global power competition. Tonight's analysis takes you inside every dimension of this event. The technical capabilities that enabled Iran to execute precision strikes against Israel's most defended target. The operational consequences for Israeli defensive doctrine and regional force posture. The strategic implications for deterrent stability and alliance relationships across the Middle East. The global ramifications as every nuclear power on Earth reassesses the vulnerability of their own strategic facilities. And the existential question facing Israeli leadership as they confront the reality that their ultimate security guarantee can now be credibly threatened by regional adversary capabilities developed indigenously without superpower assistance. The Dimona Nuclear Research Center represents the physical manifestation of Israeli strategic independence. Constructed beginning in 1958 with French technical assistance and operated in deliberate ambiguity ever since, Dimona houses the reactor complex, reprocessing facilities, and weapons assembly infrastructure that have produced Israel's undeclared but universally acknowledged nuclear arsenal. The facility sits in the Negev desert, approximately 55 kilometers from Beersheba, deliberately positioned in remote terrain to minimize civilian proximity while maximizing early warning time against potential strikes from traditional threat vectors. Israeli defensive architecture surrounding Dimona includes multiple overlapping layers specifically designed to create impenetrable intercept coverage. Iron Dome batteries provide short-range intercept capability against rockets and mortars. David's sling systems engage medium-range threats, including cruise missiles and tactical ballistic missiles. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 batteries provide exo-atmospheric intercept capability against ballistic missile threats. Patriot batteries add redundancy across the medium-altitude intercept envelope. Fighter aircraft on continuous alert provide additional intercept options and rapid response capability. This defensive architecture represents cumulative investment exceeding $8 billion over 3 decades, designed by the finest minds in Israeli and American defensive systems engineering, optimized specifically to ensure that no strike package could penetrate to Dimona regardless of the quantity or sophistication of incoming threats. That architecture failed tonight, not because it malfunctioned, not because operators made errors, but because Iranian weapon systems have evolved beyond the technical parameters these defenses were designed to counter. The Fatah-2 hypersonic missile that formed the primary strike component represents a fundamental departure from the ballistic missile technology these defensive systems were optimized to defeat. Traditional ballistic missiles follow predictable parabolic trajectories that allow defensive systems to calculate intercept geometry during the boost and mid-course phases, positioning interceptors along the projected flight path to achieve kinetic kill during the terminal phase. The Fatah-2 eliminates this predictability through a maneuvering re-entry vehicle that executes lateral displacement maneuvers throughout the terminal phase, at velocities exceeding Mach 13. The computational challenge this creates for defensive systems is insurmountable with current intercept technology. Radar systems tracking a target at hypersonic velocity have measurement update rates measured in seconds. A target executing lateral maneuvers at 4 kilometers per second can displace by 22 kilometers between radar updates. Intercept missiles require several seconds to adjust trajectory based on new targeting information. By the time the interceptor adjusts to the target's new position, the target has already maneuvered again. The geometry becomes impossible. Israel's Arrow 3 system, which represents the most sophisticated exo-atmospheric intercept capability deployed anywhere on Earth, was designed and optimized against non-maneuvering re-entry vehicles following ballistic trajectories at known velocities. Against a maneuvering re-entry vehicle executing unpredictable displacement at hypersonic speed, Arrow 3's intercept probability degrades from the design specification of 92% against conventional ballistic threats to less than 15% against maneuvering hypersonic threats, according to modeling conducted by defense contractors on similar systems. The degradation reflects fundamental physics rather than engineering shortcomings. Interceptor acceleration cannot match hypersonic target maneuverability. Sensor update rates cannot track position changes at these velocities. Computational systems cannot process trajectory solutions faster than the target changes trajectory. The result is a defensive system designed for threats that no longer represent the primary challenge it faces. The Shahed 238 loitering munitions that accompanied the Fatah-2 missiles in tonight's strike package serve a different but complementary function in overwhelming Israeli defenses. These systems do not penetrate through speed but through saturation and deception. Launched in waves of 30 to 40 units per salvo, the Shahed 238 presents defensive systems with target-rich environments that force prioritization decisions under extreme time pressure. Radar operators confronting 50 simultaneous inbound tracks must determine which represent genuine threats to critical infrastructure and which represent decoys or lower priority targets. The decision must be made in seconds because intercept windows at the velocities and ranges involved do not permit lengthy analysis. The Shahed 238 exploits this decision pressure through deliberate ambiguity. Some units carry genuine warheads designed to damage defensive radars or intercept launchers. Others carry electronic warfare payloads designed to jam defensive systems or create false targeting data. Others are decoys designed purely to consume intercept inventory. Defensive operators cannot distinguish between these categories until terminal phase, by which time intercept opportunities have been consumed on decoys, while genuine threats proceed unopposed to their targets. The coordination between the Fatah-2 and Shahed 238 systems demonstrates sophisticated operational planning that reflects genuine joint force integration capability. The Shahed 238 waves arrive first, forcing Israeli defensive systems to engage and reveal their positions, capabilities, and intercept inventory levels. The electromagnetic signatures generated by defensive radar systems during these intercept sequences provide precise location data for subsequent strikes. The Fatah-2 missiles launch during the chaotic period when defensive systems are cycling through reload sequences, processing multiple simultaneous tracks, and attempting to reconstitute defensive coverage after expending intercept inventory on the initial Shahed waves. The hypersonic missiles exploit the temporary gaps in defensive coverage, the degraded radar performance from electronic warfare effects, and the cognitive overload affecting defensive operators managing complex intercept sequences under extreme pressure. This coordination represents capabilities that regional adversaries were not supposed to possess for another decade, according to intelligence assessments produced as recently as 18 months ago. Iran has compressed a development timeline that Western analysts projected would require 10 to 15 years of sustained investment into a capability demonstrated operationally tonight. Israeli decision-makers are currently confronting a reality that fundamentally inverts their strategic assumptions about regional power projection and deterrence sustainability. For 6 decades, Israeli defense planning has operated from the foundation that nuclear deterrence provided absolute security guarantee, regardless of regional conventional military balance. Adversary nations might achieve local tactical advantages, might develop sophisticated weapon systems, might even achieve temporary numerical superiority in specific capabilities, but none of this mattered strategically because Israel retained the ultimate escalation option that could not be countered or neutralized. This assumption has driven every major strategic decision Israel has made since achieving nuclear capability. It has enabled aggressive regional policies confident that adversaries could never impose existential costs on Israeli territory, regardless of their conventional capabilities. It has justified levels of regional intervention and military action that would be strategically reckless for any nation without nuclear backstop. It has sustained political coalitions and military doctrines predicated on the belief that Israeli survival was guaranteed by weapon systems that adversaries could never credibly threaten. Tonight's demonstration strike eliminates this assumption. The precision targeting of Dimona does not require destroying the facility to achieve strategic effect. It merely requires demonstrating that destruction is achievable if Iranian leadership chooses to execute it. This demonstration shifts the entire deterrence architecture from Israeli advantage to bilateral mutual vulnerability. Israel can still threaten Iranian cities with nuclear strikes, but Iran can now threaten the Israeli facilities that house the arsenal that enables those strikes. The mutual vulnerability creates strategic paralysis that fundamentally constrains Israeli options for regional force employment. Every aggressive action Israel contemplates must now be evaluated against the possibility that Iran responds by executing precision strikes against Dimona that could damage or destroy the reactor complex, the reprocessing facilities, or the weapons assembly infrastructure. The replacement timeline for these facilities is measured in decades and would require international cooperation that would be extraordinarily difficult to secure given the political sensitivities surrounding Israeli nuclear capabilities. A successful Iranian strike that damages critical Dimona infrastructure could set Israeli nuclear weapons program back 20 years, potentially eliminating the arsenal entirely if damage prevents continued weapons-grade material production. The operational consequences extend beyond theoretical deterrence calculations into immediate practical constraints on Israeli military planning. Every strike package Israel assembles against Iranian targets must now account for the possibility of Iranian precision counterstrikes against Israeli nuclear infrastructure. This calculation fundamentally limits the scale and intensity of strikes Israel can execute without triggering responses that Israeli leadership considers unacceptable. The freedom of action Israel has enjoyed for decades in conducting military operations against Iranian-linked targets across the region has been constrained by the credible threat of precision strikes against targets Israel considers absolutely critical to long-term survival. Israeli Air Force mission planners are currently reassessing every target package previously approved for execution against Iranian nuclear facilities, IRGC command nodes, and regional proxy infrastructure. Missions previously considered strategically sound because Iranian response options were limited to conventional retaliation that Israeli defenses could manage now require complete recalculation, given Iranian demonstrated capability to strike Israeli nuclear infrastructure with precision. The broader regional implications ripple across every capital from Ankara to Riyadh as governments reassess the strategic balance and their own positioning within it. For decades, Gulf Arab states have maintained complex relationships with both Israel and Iran, privately cooperating with Israel on intelligence sharing and military coordination, while publicly maintaining distance to avoid domestic political backlash and preserve relationships with Iran. This balancing act was sustainable because Israeli military and nuclear superiority appeared permanent and overwhelming. Tonight's events eliminate this assumption. Gulf states observing Iranian precision strike capability against Israeli nuclear infrastructure are recalculating their own vulnerability and questioning whether Israeli partnership provides the security guarantees they believed it offered. If Israel cannot protect its own most critical strategic facilities from Iranian precision strikes, what protection can Israel offer to regional partners facing similar Iranian capabilities? Saudi Arabia, which has moved toward increasingly open coordination with Israel in recent years, is conducting emergency strategic assessments tonight, evaluating whether continued Israeli alignment creates more risk than benefit. The precision targeting of Dimona demonstrates that Iran can hold at risk any facility in the region, regardless of defensive architecture protecting it. Saudi nuclear infrastructure, oil production facilities, desalination plants, and government command centers are all potentially targetable with the same precision Iran demonstrated tonight. The strategic calculation facing Saudi leadership is whether alignment with Israel provides sufficient benefits to justify the risk of becoming a priority target for Iranian precision strike capabilities that have just demonstrated they can penetrate any defense. The preliminary assessments emerging from Riyadh suggest a significant strategic reassessment is underway that could fundamentally alter the regional alignment patterns that have defined Middle Eastern geopolitics for the past decade. If you want analysis this sharp, this deep, this willing to challenge official narratives, subscribe now to ensure you never miss an update. The information you are receiving right now is not available in mainstream defense commentary that remains captured by official talking points and institutional assumptions that tonight's events have rendered obsolete. This channel provides the analysis that cuts through the comfortable illusions and confronts the uncomfortable realities that shape actual strategic competition. The American response to tonight's events reveals the paralysis affecting Washington as policymakers confront the implications of Iranian capabilities they did not anticipate and cannot immediately counter. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which has maintained position in the eastern Mediterranean as a visible symbol of American commitment to Israeli security, received emergency orders to reposition approximately 6 hours after the Dimona strike. The repositioning involves moving the strike group beyond the operational range of Iranian anti-ship missiles, a movement that signals American assessment that forward-deployed carrier assets are now at unacceptable risk from Iranian precision strike capabilities. This withdrawal represents the first time American carrier forces have repositioned away from crisis zones in the Middle East, based purely on threat assessment rather than mission completion. The signal this sends to regional allies and adversaries is unambiguous. American military presence is no longer confident it can operate with impunity in waters where Iranian precision strike systems can achieve targeting solutions. The withdrawal decision reflects sober assessment by American naval commanders that carrier strike groups represent concentrated high-value targets vulnerable to saturation attacks from the same precision strike capabilities Iran demonstrated against Dimona tonight. A single carrier represents over $15 billion of concentrated American military power, housing 60 combat aircraft, carrying 5,000 personnel, and serving as the visible symbol of American force projection globally. The loss of a carrier to Iranian anti-ship missiles would represent the single most catastrophic military defeat America has suffered since Pearl Harbor, with casualties potentially exceeding the entire Vietnam War death toll in a matter of hours. The political consequences of such a loss would be regime-ending for any American administration that allowed forward deployment in threat environments where loss was foreseeable. Naval commanders making the repositioning decision tonight are operating from the assessment that Iranian precision strike capabilities demonstrated against Dimona could achieve similar results against carrier-based targets if Iranian leadership chose to execute strikes. The prudent course is withdrawal beyond threat range until defensive countermeasures adequate to the threat can be developed and deployed. This withdrawal decision fundamentally undermines the credibility of American security guarantees to Israel and regional partners. For decades, the visible presence of American carrier strike groups during Middle Eastern crises has served as tangible evidence of American commitment to defend allies and deter adversary aggression. The withdrawal of those assets in response to demonstrated Iranian capabilities signals that American forces will not accept the risks necessary to maintain deterrence against adversaries who have achieved sophisticated precision strike systems. Regional partners observing American carriers retreating from threat zones are drawing conclusions about whether American security guarantees remain credible when confronting adversaries with genuine military capabilities rather than insurgent groups lacking advanced weapons. The credibility erosion creates space for regional actors to pursue independent security arrangements that do not rely on American protection that may not materialize when actually needed. The global implications extend beyond the Middle East as nuclear powers worldwide reassess the vulnerability of their own strategic facilities to precision strike capabilities. The demonstration that Iran can target Israeli nuclear infrastructure with precision using indigenously developed systems creates immediate questions about whether other regional powers can achieve similar capabilities against American, Russian, Chinese, French, British, Indian, or Pakistani nuclear facilities. The Cold War assumption that nuclear arsenals were invulnerable because the facilities housing them were located in remote, secure locations protected by sophisticated defensive systems has been fundamentally challenged by tonight's events. If Iran can develop hypersonic precision strike capabilities that penetrate Israeli defenses optimized specifically to prevent such strikes, what prevents North Korea from developing similar capabilities against American nuclear facilities? What prevents Pakistan from threatening Indian nuclear infrastructure? What prevents non-state actors with state sponsorship from acquiring similar technologies? The strategic stability framework that has prevented nuclear war for 8 decades rests partly on the assumption that nuclear arsenals themselves are invulnerable to conventional strikes, creating certainty that nuclear powers retain secure second strike capability regardless of conventional military outcomes. This certainty enables nuclear powers to avoid hair-trigger launch postures because they can be confident their arsenals will survive initial strikes and retain the capability to execute devastating retaliation. The vulnerability of nuclear facilities to precision conventional strikes undermines this stability by creating incentives for preemptive strikes against adversary nuclear infrastructure before conflicts escalate to nuclear thresholds. If nuclear facilities can be destroyed or severely damaged through conventional precision strikes, nuclear powers face use it or lose it pressures that did not previously exist, creating crisis instability that increases the probability of nuclear employment during conventional conflicts. Israel is confronting an existential strategic dilemma that has no clear resolution within the frameworks that have governed Israeli defense planning for 6 decades. The traditional response to security threats has been overwhelming military action designed to eliminate threats before they mature into existential dangers. This approach worked against adversaries developing nuclear capabilities before achieving operational arsenals. It worked against adversaries developing long-range missile systems before achieving precision guidance. It worked against adversaries developing sophisticated defensive systems before achieving integrated operational deployment. But it cannot work against precision strike capabilities that have already been demonstrated operationally. Israeli strikes against Iranian missile production facilities, command and control infrastructure, or weapons storage sites would now trigger Iranian counterstrikes against Dimona using the precision capabilities Iran has already deployed. The traditional Israeli approach of aggressive preemption has been neutralized by adversary achievement of mutually vulnerable deterrence. The alternative approach of defensive hardening and intercept capability enhancement faces fundamental technical limitations. Israeli defensive systems are already among the most sophisticated on Earth, benefiting from unlimited American technical support and decades of operational refinement. The failure of these systems to prevent precision strikes tonight reflects physics and mathematics rather than engineering shortcomings. Developing intercept capabilities adequate to defeat hypersonic maneuvering threats would require fundamental breakthroughs in sensor technology, interceptor propulsion, and computational processing that are not achievable through incremental improvement of current systems. The timeline for such breakthroughs is measured in decades and would require sustained investment at levels that strain even American defense budgets. Israel cannot unilaterally solve the technical challenges that have defeated the combined efforts of American and Israeli defense establishments over 30 years of continuous development. The final option facing Israeli leadership is acceptance of mutual vulnerability and fundamental revision of regional strategy to operate within constraints imposed by adversary precision strike capabilities. This acceptance would require abandoning the freedom of action Israel has enjoyed for decades, constraining military operations to levels that do not trigger Iranian responses targeting nuclear infrastructure, and accepting regional power balance fundamentally different from the overwhelming superiority Israel has maintained since 1967. This psychological shift represents a transition as significant as any in Israeli history, requiring national leadership to acknowledge that military solutions are no longer available for every security challenge and that strategic restraint is now necessary for survival. The political coalition currently governing Israel shows no indication of willingness to accept such constraints, creating potential for continued escalation driven by refusal to acknowledge strategic realities that tonight's events have made undeniable. Subscribe to this channel because in a world this dangerous, analysis this sharp is not optional, it is necessary. What you are witnessing tonight is a turning point that will be studied by strategic analysts and military historians for generations. The Middle Eastern power balance has been permanently altered. The assumptions that have governed Israeli strategic planning for 6 decades have been invalidated. The credibility of American security guarantees has been fundamentally undermined. The vulnerability of nuclear arsenals to conventional precision strikes has been demonstrated operationally for the first time in history. The old order is collapsing and a new order is being born through events whose full implications will take years to fully manifest, but whose immediate consequences are already reshaping strategic calculations across every capital from Washington to Beijing. Has this night permanently altered the Middle Eastern power balance, or will Israel find options to restore the strategic superiority it has lost? Your engagement keeps this work independent and sharp. Stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop asking the questions that matter.